Could Kalen DeBoer play not one, but two quarterbacks? And would that mean Keelon Russell or Austin Mack with Ty Simpson? We're going to talk that. Lane Kiffin on Theo Vaughn's podcast, talking about his time at Alabama. Seems like he's taking a little more responsibility for his behavior. We're going to get into that. And CBS ranks SEC running backs. Where is Alabama on that? And who knows? There might be a tight end coming to Tuscaloosa. I told you guys. Did you hear me? I told you guys. It's happening. Well, we'll see. That's Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. And we're brought to you by Pearl River Resort. It's time for Cover Crimson. Let's get this thing going. There he is, Clint Lamb in the flesh, the most popular guy at the 8A game. I was there with him, and it was like hanging out with Elvis.
I feel like that's not what happened. I feel like it was a combination of both of us. And once again, that was cool to be able to put some faces to some of the people who listen to the show because they
LA Stan, thank you for the Stogue, brother.
Yeah, I actually think I'm gonna smoke that this weekend.
I do that too.
Got some plans, so I'm looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be a nice, relax. Maybe get. I don't drink a whole lot, but maybe get a little scotch or something. Scotch in the car. So it should be pretty good, man.
He made my day because we were doing the sound check and I played the Big Elmo Open, from the tailgate show, and I saw him singing along and I thought, man, if Brett just knew how many people loved him,
That's right.
Thought about him a lot this week. Anyway, all right, let's talk some Alabama football, Clint, and remind you guys that you can always catch us on covercrimson.com. And the reason I'm telling you that is with everything going on, you're going to want to take advantage of our $25 off annual subscription. We get on there, and when you only get us for a half hour here, you get Clint 24/7 on the message board. Take advantage of it. All right, will Coach DeBoer play two quarterbacks? You put that up there, and I said, ooh, that is a very interesting topic, Clint. You're going to do me like that now.
It is an interesting topic, and, the reason that it's interesting is not in the sense of it being a permanent thing. The question that was phrased to him, this was according to an article on AO.com, it was phrased in a way of, hey, can you see yourself getting to game one and kind of still having your quarterback battle where you're playing two guys, kind of like Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa in that Louisville game a couple of years or several years ago now, I guess I'd say couple. Could this be something that kind of lingers in the next season? And Kalen DeBoer was pretty much like, no, that's not really the plan. They want to have, from a leadership standpoint, they want to have this stuff established. They want to have a quarterback who's kind of got the respect of the locker room. Everybody's ready. He's ready to lead. They're ready to follow. He just feels like that's, quarterback's the most important position on the field. Having a good leadership there is very important. That's why the fact that they brought up how well Ty has been doing as far as the leadership, that's, something that I'm sure is playing into his advantage. And, there's something else that I wanted to bring up with this and kind of get your thoughts, because if I'm not mistaken, and maybe you remember, maybe you don't, but I want to say that at some point, maybe it was before spring practice or right after spring practice started, I want to say it was Kalen DeBoer said something about, they would like to have a starter named coming out of the spring. Now, that didn't mean that they were going to, and they understood the importance of the competition and the transfer portal and kind of keeping that going. But I want to say he said something to that effect. And what I find interesting is that if I recall that correctly, it's like he's threaded this needle, the coaching staff has, where they've kind of achieved both purposes, where you haven't named a starter, not for week one, but you've kind of given the team a guy to kind of rally behind based off of where Ty Simpson's at right now. And that can be something from a leadership standpoint, carrying guys through the summer, getting them ready for fall camp. That's very beneficial. Exactly why he said that they would like to do that if possible. But it also keeps the competition open. And Austin Mack knows he's going to get his opportunity to uproot Ty Simpson in fall camp. And Keelon Russell, while I do think he's completely fine with sitting for a year, at least a year, I mean, I'm not going to go beyond that. I think that he is I think it's set up a situation where that could end up being a thing that helps as far as your leadership and all that stuff is concerned.
With these guys, they talk a lot about Michael Penix, right? I mean, how many times do you hear them mention Michael Penix, who was their quarterback, Indiana, and then in Washington, who was great at both places? And it kind of feels like they're looking for that guy. And it, to me, I don't see you having that with a 2-quarterback system.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's important. Now, granted, if they feel like Ty Simpson, the big problem a couple of years ago is that none of the guys in the competition had stepped up and claimed the job. And so Nick Saban was kind of forced, and that'd be from, I think people were rallying around Jalen Milroe, but he had not done enough to solidify himself as the starting quarterback. He had not stepped up and taken the bull by the horns, neither at Ty Simpson, neither at anybody else. I don't think that will be the case this fall. Like, I think in a lot of ways, like, Ty Simpson has stepped up and he has kind of done the things necessary to win the job. It's just a matter of, they know Austin Mack is super talented. They know Keelon Russell is super talented. And so at any point, I mean, it could become a situation where one of those two guys is just too good to keep off the field. But I think it's a little bit of a different situation than it was a couple of years ago. That's what makes me encouraged as far as, where this quarterback competition can potentially lead come the fall. I just think they're in a really good spot. I think they got high upside with all of them. Does Keelon Russell have higher upside than anybody else on the roster at the quarterback position? Yes. Does Austin Mack probably have, if everything clicked and hit for him, maybe a higher ceiling than Ty Simpson? Yes. But all three have really, really high ceilings. All three are capable. And, one of the things that Kalen DeBoer brought up as far as playing 2 quarterbacks, and this kind of goes beyond the competition aspect of it, it's more so to help you win. He's like, their skill sets are all similar enough where you're not going to have packages for certain guys. Like, if you had a guy who was really good, if you had a Jalen Milroe type who was kind of the backup, who was a dynamic runner, and he's one of the best athletes on your team, you might have a situation. Maybe your quarterback position isn't set up in a way like it was under Bryce Young, where it's like, that's the future number 1 overall pick. We're not taking him off the field.
Right.
I don't think that's going to be the situation this year. And so because of that, maybe you would have worked in a Jalen Milroe, have packages and things that he did to kind of strain the defense, but they're all similar enough where you really don't need that. So I don't think that that's something that they're going to really pursue.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on that too. But I feel like this is Ty Simpson's team right now, and he won the job, and they're saying that he won the job. And if the season starts, he's got to keep competing. But he's going to. You don't come from a family of coaching and not know that his dad's had to make the same decisions before. So I mean, this is how it happens, right? You go out there, you do your thing, and then you keep doing it, because if you don't, somebody else is going to take your job.
I mean, I think it's good to have the pressure on you at all times. I think the more pressure you have on you in these types of situations, like quarterback battles, you dealt with pressure all throughout the spring. You dealt with pressure all throughout fall camp. When you're dealing with a lot of pressures and stuff when things are live, you've kind of grown accustomed to living under pressure. And I think that's beneficial relative to the other way that it could work out.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think Ty's in a really good position. Everything that we've heard, like someone on Twitter, they said that they felt like that the bar, and which I viewed as, they said the bar, but I think it's more so the ceiling with Austin Mack is higher than Ty Simpson. Yeah. And so they feel like that before it's all said and done, Mack's going to win the job. I do want to bring this up because I disagree with that statement. But the reason that I want to bring this up is that I want people to understand that Mack is not close to being a finished product by any means. Ty Simpson is 22 years old right now, and he's going to be 23 in December. Austin Mack is 18 right now, and he's going to turn 19 in early June. So he is significantly 3.5 years younger than Ty Simpson right now.
Right.
And with Keelon Russell is currently 17 years old. He's going to turn 18 at the end of this month. So there's going to be a short period, about 1.5 months, where him and Keelon Russell and Austin Mack are the exact same age. And when Austin Mack got to Alabama, after having a full season playing for a Division I Power 4 program or being on the team, he was still 17 years old when he arrived at Alabama last summer. And so when he arrived, I think he arrived at the end of June at Washington. So he had just turned 17 years old when he got there. Like if he would have showed up at the beginning of summer, which is what a lot of these guys do, he would have shown up on campus, not even having been able to drive for a year. That's how young this guy is.
Right.
He's just about
Crazy.
19 years old, which is where a freshman would be. That's where you look at him and you say that the ceiling is there. I mean, he's got a fantastic arm. He's got a fantastic frame, works extremely hard, good football mind, but he is young, and he only had 1 year of starting experience on the high school level. So that is all he's had to work on. And it's like Kalen DeBoer has said, this entire time up until this spring, he has been bare minimum quarterback 3. So he's never gotten the opportunity to get quarterback 2 reps in practice or quarterback 1 reps in practice. There was 1 week where they decided to hold Michael Penix out that week just to make sure he's rested up for the season at Washington, and Austin Mack worked as the quarterback 2 for that 1 week. So this is by far the most reps that Austin Mack has ever gotten. So the fact that he is still growing and that he has some problems that maybe Ty Simpson doesn't have, and maybe, he's dealing with, it would look like freshman mistakes, like similar to Keelon Russell. He's very young, he's very green, and he's going to take some time too, but the ceiling is certainly there. I just think that Ty Simpson, we act like ceilings are automatic, and you got to reach your ceiling.
Right.
And that's something that we don't know will happen. And it's certainly not a guaranteed thing to happen in fall camp or in 2025 for Austin Mack. So you can't assume he's going to end up being a better option than Ty Simpson. That's why I think right now, Ty Simpson, not only is he going to be the most steady on that front, he's also got a tremendous amount of upside himself. So it's not like the situation where you're having to sacrifice just an enormous amount of talent to make sure you got the most steady presence. I think Ty Simpson's extremely talented too.
Guys, I want to tell you about our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag. They keep the channel going, and we know that you can't always get to the casino in person, but you want to still have a good time. MyBookie.ag. Take advantage of our promo code Crimson, 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip when using our code Crimson at mybookie.ag. Great time to do it with, you got professional racing and golf and basketball and then baseball and all this stuff. Baseball is fun too. You just got to check it out. And I know some of you've taken advantage of this. So
NFL draft is less than a week away now.
Clint keeps talking about the NFL draft. Where is Jalen Milroe going to end up? First round Steelers.
If you feel confident that he's going to be a first round draft pick, go put your money where your mouth is. If you feel confident, hey, I know that this is just a bunch of sunshine pumping and that he'll fall out of the first round like Malik Willis or Will Levis or a bunch of other guys, go put your money where your mouth is over at mybookie.com. But mybookie.ag, make sure you use that promo code Crimson to get a 50% deposit bonus. And what is that casino chip?
$10 casino chip. Boom.
Hey, come on. Go take advantage.
All right, there you go. Say Roll Tide with a thumbs up, guys. Thanks for hanging out. All right, this is a topic that I thought we got to get into. And you guys love talking about this. Lane Kiffin was Alabama's offensive coordinator from 2014 to 2016. He was a genius when it came to calling up plays, and he was reckless outside of the football facility. And that's why they didn't hire him to be the head coach. But he's got the talent to be the head coach. He just burned the damn bridges. And I mean, that bridge that goes from Tuscaloosa to Northport, he lit that up on his way out of town. And there's so many different things that could possibly be said about it. I mean, I've described him as as Rick James off of the Chappelle Show, like those skits. I mean, we could make a show based off of him. But with that said, he was on Theo Vaughn, and he started to take some accountability for the fact that he was not really well thought of when he was in Tuscaloosa by Coach Saban and his staff, not for being a great coach, but for maybe being disruptive. And now he's the guy, and he's got to probably deal with hymns, like, think about that. But he was really immature, but he's also really, really talented. I think that's a fair way of putting it. And I enjoyed watching what he had to say. But what'd you think? I mean, and what do you think of the Kiffin era? And I want to say this last thing, Clint. The biggest problem I have with him is that 2016 he got that job, and if he's locked in, Bama wins the national championship. Clemson doesn't beat them if he's there and locked in. He got that job, Florida Atlantic job, right? And he checked out, and he's like the only coach that Saban ever got rid of like that. When you think about coordinators that got head coaching jobs, he's the only one, and that tells you all you need to know. But he seems to act like he and Saban are boys. I just don't buy that.
It's funny, and it's not exactly apples to apples. It's not the perfect comparison, but I'm actually rewatching Suits right now. Sometimes I put on a show I've seen before. That way I can focus on work, having it in the background. But
right.
It just reminds me of watching that show. Like Jessica, the managing partner, she dealt with Harvey Specter, who's like the main character of the show, or one of them. And he kind of does just a ton of stuff that frustrates her, and kind of does a lot of risky things that he shouldn't do. And it's like she loves him to death, but at the same time, I mean, she can't stand some of the stuff that he pulls. As I've been watching that, and then hearing what Lane Kiffin had to say about Saban, I just was reminded of it. Like, think about how much they butted heads, and he was around for 3 years. I mean, so Nick Saban was able to put aside the fact that this guy causes him headaches, and he does some things that he shouldn't be doing, but he's a hell of a ball coach, hell of an offensive mind, and he was going to help Alabama win football games. So I think that's interesting, and I agree with you. I think as you get older and stuff, like I think Kiffin actually compared it to like a parent that they make life suggestions or kind of try to guide you or steer you. And as you're a teenager, you're thinking they're idiots and they don't know what they're talking about. And as you get older, you're like, man, old Poppy, he actually knew what he was talking about.
Right.
I probably should have listened more. Kiffin went through that same thing with Nick Saban. And so to me, it's not really like a friends thing. It's more of like Lane Kiffin was like a son that really just was in some ways was similar, had enough similarities like with the football minds and stuff, but also was like the polar opposite from a personality standpoint, to a point where Nick Saban, I'm sure, he's spoken a lot more fondly. I'm not saying that he hadn't said good things about Kiffin, but he's spoken way more fondly of a lot of other coaches, assistants that he's had than Kiffin. But it's good to see that he's kind of taking accountability. And I also thought it was pretty fascinating how he brought up the relief syndrome, and how when it was explained to him, or excuse me, he was explained on the Pivot podcast that Nick Saban was on. He's like, well, he never explained it to us like that. But it was like this, to combat complacency, ripping people after wins.
Yep.
Just as soon as the season was over, it's like you immediately start focusing on recruiting, and you win the national championship. Kiffin thinks you need to have some time to celebrate it. Saban's like, we got a 7 a.m. staff meeting tomorrow. And it's like, wah. It's like, well, we've been winning national championships, but everybody else, we're behind now because everybody else has been out recruiting. We got ground to make up. That is no one, I'm telling you, no one will ever have that mentality to that extent ever again. Kirby Smart does not have that mentality to that extent. No one would. That guy, his ability to, it doesn't matter what, he was so not focused on outcomes. It was all about the process. That's what made him the greatest college football coach of all time. And I don't think anybody will ever come close to touching him.
No. And the way that Lane Kiffin acted at Alabama, stuff that we'll talk about on here and stuff that you and I will talk about off here, which some of it's so ridiculous with him. It's just a shame because he missed an opportunity to walk out with 2 national championships, back-to-back championships as an offensive coordinator. You know, he talked about his time at USC with Pete Carroll, and Pete Carroll's leadership style probably mirrors what I would be like. Hey, you know, I want to hear what you think. I mean, more laid-back guy, but Saban's the GOAT, man. And the way that he does things and the way that he did things, it's almost, you almost feel like he's like programmed, like he's some kind of a robot or an AI developed person, you know. But the frustrating part about Kiffin is, for so many years it was like he was on third base and thought he was born on third and thought he hit a triple. We used to say that about him when he was in Tuscaloosa. Some of the other coaches couldn't stand him because he wasn't responsible. And to the way that he left was unacceptable. You know, I mean, that team in 2016 was better than 2015. Clemson was worse than they were the year before that. Bama's defense that year was great. The offense was excellent until he got that job. And then the Washington game, I was sitting there with Mike Johnson. We're watching. And we're just like, what's going on? You know, I heard that he, who knows if this is true or not, but that he was calling plays that were from the year before at the walkthrough. You know, like, what is he doing? You know? And I feel like he's talked about that he quit drinking, and that's probably part of it, you know, like where he's a lot more focused now. The shame, though, is that, you know, when his dad being one of the all-time great defensive coordinators, is that he's gotten a lot of opportunities that other people hadn't. But after he burnt down his entire career, Saban's the one that rescued him. And
which is why he has such a big appreciation for Saban.
He says that, but I mean, and that comes out of his mouth, and then he's like going to take a shot at Saban for letting his 1-year-old grandson win the Easter egg. The Easter egg.
I think he likes trolling
funny,
people.
But, you know, like
I think from his perspective, he views Nick Saban as a friend.
Yeah.
And so he picks at Nick Saban. Like, they talk about all the trash and stuff, and that they talk to each other in that group chat with like Kirby Smart and all those people. Obviously, right. Nick Saban's not in that, but it's like, that's just what friends do. They rag each other. And anytime he's never come at Nick Saban in any sort of way that was like necessarily that I can remember. Maybe
remember when he was tweeting though, before Nick played him the last time, like put that tweet out about Taylor Swift's song about empires crumbling or whatever.
Troll. It's him trolling. Yeah, you know,
got his ass kicked, by the way.
That's right, and that's exactly
kicked.
Because it's, you know, it's like when you got a kid and it's like, Pops, I think I'm beating you on NCAA. I think I'm beating you on NCAA today, and it's like, okay, you gonna learn today. You know, 66-0 by the end of this. But it was cool to kind of get a peek in. I think he has matured a lot. I think, you know, obviously he's doing some really good things at Ole Miss. I thought it was interesting how he brought up the fact that he was at one time, he was just always in hurry up mode and always looking for the next job, looking to climb, and how being at Ole Miss and stuff has kind of caused him to kind of slow down a little bit. I think once Nick Saban retired and Alabama didn't hire him and he missed out on the Florida job, missed out on the LSU job, I think he's kind of figured out, okay, you know, probably my past, you know, a lot of my problems and maybe some of the stuff, the way that he operates now, and still might rub some people the wrong way. You know, Ole Miss might be ceiling here. And if, you know, I think he's learned to accept that, but I mean, he can do some good things there. He already has. I'm saying, like, he can continue to build that program.
Right.
But, you know, I thought it was nice that he kind of acknowledged that, hey, any tension or headbutting that went on with Nick Saban, he takes full responsibility for it, which we all knew. We knew it wasn't Nick's fault. Nick can be hard to deal with. You know, don't get me wrong. I'm sure he's very demanding and stuff, but any sort of headbutting that was going on, I guarantee you, we all knew it was Kiffin.
Well, it's more than just, you know, when the guys that played with him talk about he would purposely, you know, change the plays during, you know, like practice just to get a touchdown. I'm not talking about that. So that's pretty funny. I mean, it pissed Saban off, but that's
huge troll.
It's the other stuff where, you know, you start hearing from other coaches and they're telling you stuff he's doing off the field, and you're like, man, I'm not reporting on that, but because they wanted to kind of calm him down or get him out of there. And he's so talented, man. Like it honestly, it's a shame that he did that, because it would have been so easy to put him at Alabama and him being the head coach at Alabama, I think he'd be honestly better than DeBoer. Just to be honest with you, just because he gets the culture and he helped put together those 4 wide receivers that were all NFL first round picks and worked with, quarterbacks like Tua and Jake Coker and he got Blake Sims won an SEC championship because of him.
Yeah, he was
Sark was
a
quarterback. Tua. He was like an athlete, he was a great athlete, but I didn't put him in the quarterback category. I say, hey man, this guy can do a little bit of everything. He's like a jack of all trades, still won the SEC with him. So the talent's there. I'm glad that at the same time, I'm glad that he's kind of saying that. But just the gripe is that you gave up a chance to be a champion, and you don't get a lot of those opportunities in life, man. And even if you're just the offensive coordinator, it's still pretty awesome. So to get a ring and be a champion, him and the way he acted down that stretch where they got rid of him, tells you what Saban thinks about him. So I don't buy that Saban's his buddy. I just don't buy it. I saw when Saban interviewed him on game day, like it was just like, do you remember that? You just kind of feel like it wasn't like two old pals. Like when you see Saban with Kirby, it didn't have that vibe to me.
Well, he did say that when Coach Saban learned how to text, he texted him like good luck or whatever. Yeah. I don't think you're doing that, going out of your way to do something like that no one, unless Kiffin brings it up, no one's ever going to know. If you don't have at least some like level of respect or whatever, I think Nick Saban would probably tell you he was super immature back then, and that was less than 10 years ago. But dude, I think you can
coach at 31 in the NFL and they booted him for his behavior. I've never seen anything like it. The owner came out and basically read a statement saying how bad the guy was.
And then it got left on the tarmac. It
got left on the tarmac. The way that he was at Tennessee, some of the stuff that he was involved in there. Remember when he was there, he tried to say that we sabotaged his headsets in the Rocky Block, and he's blaming us for that. I don't know, but he's interesting. Like, is he good for the game? Yes. Is he a great coach? Offensive coach? Yes. Do I have any ill will towards him? No. I just wish that, like when you look back at it, man, you gave away some great opportunities, and because you're entitled, you keep getting opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And, maybe he'll figure it out now, because he does have Ole Miss as one of those teams you got to keep an eye on every single year. But I love it. And I think Theo Von's great, by the way. He's really, really good podcast guy, and I've enjoyed those podcasts. All right, CBS ranks SEC running backs. Clint, before we talk, though, I do want to remind everyone about Pearl River Resort, always brought to you by them over in Philadelphia, Mississippi. We just watched the Masters, and if you guys have seen Clint drive, he's a lot like Spieth. He can hit the ball 500 yards if he wants to, or feet, or however they do it in golf. But the Azaleas, the Oaks, to Masters level golf courses over at Dancing Rabbit, Pearl River, and you don't need a membership to go play there. Also, you got the casinos right next to each other, and I'm talking about Golden Moon and Silver Star, great acts, including Vanilla Ice and CNC Music Factory, and Young MC are going to be there. Little 90s rap, the sports book at the Timeout Lounge. Just check it all out, man. I'm telling you, you're going to enjoy it. All right. Let's rank these running backs, Clint.
The only time I'm driving at 500 yards is if you let me hop in the cart and carry it in the cart 500 yards. That's the only way.
Like You're not like Coker, the professional golfer.
No, I'm not. But getting back to the running backs, I thought it was interesting. CBS Sports, they ranked all of the SEC running backs, starting running backs. It's not the rooms, it's individual guys. And this started with Jaden Ott when he committed to Oklahoma. The Cal running back, one of 37 running backs they've had enter the transfer portal post spring. Brian Harson's doing an excellent job over there. But Jaden Ott was one of the better running backs in college football in 2023. He dealt with injuries some last year, but he went for 1,300 plus yards and 12 touchdowns back in 2023. Very good player, but he is checking in as the number one running back according to these rankings, which I'm sure is what sparked the idea. Like, hey, this guy comes in, he's immediately the best running back in the SEC, or projected to be. You got Caden Durham at LSU at 2. You got Le'Veon Moss at A&M. He's number 3. Quintravian Wisner at Texas checks in at number 4. Nate Frazier checking in at number 5 for Georgia. Jaden Bond, number 6, Florida. Ahmad Hardy, the Louisiana Monroe transfer at Missouri. He was really good for the Warhawks last season, 1,300 plus yards, 13 touchdowns. Think he'll be a good player. Davin Booth at Mississippi State checked in at number 8. Dante Dowdle at Kentucky, he checked in at number 9. And Jam Miller checked in at number 10 amongst the SEC running backs.
So way down the list.
It is way down the list. And so that's kind of why I wanted to talk about it, because it's like, I don't know, if you don't really have a headliner at the position, does that mean Alabama has better depth? Probably than a lot of these teams. But are you worried about the running back position? Like, I've seen some people say it's super deep, it's super talented. I do think it has a lot of guys who can contribute, and I think they got a lot of good running backs. Do they have a lot of elite running backs or guys that have the potential to be great? I don't know. I do think there's more potential in that room than was indicated last year. But, just curious to hear your thoughts on him checking in at number 10.
Well, part of it's the offensive line. And then the offensive line has not been consistent since 2020, right? When they won the Joe Moore Award, right? And then you lose your best guy to the NFL. So what's going to happen? And I think there's some question marks on the offensive line, but you don't win a Heisman without an offensive line, right? And when you look at the great teams that Bama has had, they've had great offensive lines, and the teams that can run have great offensive lines, consistent. We haven't had that, so that plays into this as well. And probably going, when Bama's quarterbacks get sacked all the time, they're inconsistent running the football. How many whiffs did they have in that Vanderbilt game last year? Can still sit there and watch these guys not block. So, I mean, that's part of it, right? I think the other part of it is that the most talented running back transferred. But we didn't have the offensive line that could really, give him the basically the Justice Haynes, the style of offensive line to give him a chance to get through it and do his thing, right? Jam just fit what we had, because when they miss blocks, he just makes people miss. He can kind of clean up what the mistakes are a little bit more. But they're underrating Jam. What I think where Jam separates himself from a lot of those other guys is that he catches the ball, man. I mean, like, he can catch the ball. The wheel route is always open for him. Ask Georgia. They found out twice. And I love that about him. He catches the ball. He's fast. He's pretty witty. But we saw him against Auburn last year in the Iron Bowl, like tote the rock, man, over 25 carries and physically get better as the game progressed. So I think that's a little underrating for in my mind for him. I just think he's better than that.
Well, the coaching staff has talked about injuries, to last year's running back room. That's one of the reasons that Ryan Grubb brought up, if having 6 running backs and stuff. He said, well, if you'd asked last year's group, they probably would have said we didn't have enough. That 6 wasn't enough. I think a lot Justice Haynes, especially down the stretch, I do think, based off of, like, there was some weird stuff happening. And I remember thinking at one point, and you don't want to say this, you don't want to put this out there because it kind of becomes a storyline and everybody starts worrying about it. But me internally, I remember there was a certain point where I was kind of watching, I don't remember what game it was, but just his role kind of diminished a little bit. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, one of 2 things is happening. Either A, he's not 100%, or B, he's planning to transfer, and they know that. And it's like, well, okay, we've been kind of giving you the opportunity. You've kind of been running tandem with Jam. We're going to start leaning on Jam a lot more. I think it was more so injuries. Now, he ended up transferring, but,
right.
we don't know what Michigan will have with Justice Haynes. We'll have to find out. I do think at times the vision really wasn't there. Justice Haynes wasn't seeing it enough. Watching Jam, I think his biggest problem going back and watching is sometimes he just likes to bounce things too much. He's always trying to get to the corner, and he's good at that. He's effective at that, but he will commit to running it inside, and the holes were there. Sometimes he had to. He didn't have a choice. I mean, you're right. The offensive line inconsistencies, they were a big problem. But, when he would commit inside, like, he's a powerful runner, he can deliver a little bit of punishment. I think the patience tackle to tackle, as far as, allowing things to set up, I think at a certain point, it kind of felt like he stopped trusting the patience because the offensive line couldn't do for him what he was needing them to do. So he maybe was pressing a little bit too much, but I think he's got vision. He showed that on multiple occasions. I think he's got the patience. I think he's got home run hitting ability. He's good in pass protection, and he's good as far as being a receiver out of the backfield. So like you talk about like the 5-tool running backs and what he could potentially be outside of like, I wish you could trust him a little bit more. We'll find out if he can really develop, not trying to bounce everything outside, committing more to the inside run game. Then and the offensive line can get him a more consistent push on the interior. I think, and I think a healthy Jaden Roberts is going to help that. A bigger and stronger and more comfortable Parker Brelsler is going to help that. Obviously, you're taking a step down at left guard, but I think right tackle is going to be improved from a season ago. So I fully expect that to be, better for him. But if he can do that, I think he could be one of the better running backs in the SEC. I still think he's one of the more talented. I also, I like Richard Young. He's more of like a one cut. I saw somebody, I don't remember who it was. And I'm not going to call him out by name, but somebody was like talking about Richard Young's feet in a drill and how great they looked. And it's like, no, I'm not saying like he is not really the guy who's going to look great in those kind of drills, like a Justice Haynes or, a Jam Miller. He's more of a one cut runner, doesn't have a lot of elusiveness, but he's just a powerful guy. Gets north and south. You love that about him. Bigger type of player. But Daniel Hill's the one that I'm really excited about because not only do I think is he seeing it well based off of what we've heard, and that is a huge part of this. He's like a guy who will deliver the blows. He has a good understanding of the offensive line and what they're trying to do and how he fits into that. And it's like I think he can consistently churn out yardage for you. And I think he could be a guy who can create some big plays. He didn't have the home run hitting ability of a Jam Miller, but I like this running back room. We've talked a lot about Draylon Washington, not really just going to dive super hard into him, but I do like Alabama's running back room. I do think it'll be headlined by Jam Miller. I do think Richard Young is going to be a part of that rotation, but Daniel Hill, a lot of people were talking about his emergence this spring, and maybe that's more of a 2026 thing, though. That very well could be the case. But when the types of things they're saying about Daniel Hill, it's like if he's giving you that, get him on the field because he can help you. You don't have to have this, super explosive, Jahmyr Gibbs type of excitement, electric type of running. If he can consistently give you in the run game what you need to complement the passing game, do it.
All right, final thing, Clint, you and I both heard that Bama is going to add some guys in the transfer portal and look for them to be pretty active in the portal. I heard that they already are, working on this now. So, and maybe they're looking at Troy for a tight end.
Yeah, that's Brody Dalton, which is just a phenomenal name, by the way. 6'5", 250. Kind of fits the profile of what you would think coming from a smaller school like Troy. Like he had a couple of years at UAB, then he transferred to Troy, had a couple of, played a couple of years there. I think he has over 900 snaps in his career with like 540 of those roughly coming in 2024. 16 starts, 10 of those coming in 2024. And so, when I'm watching him on tape and stuff, spends close to about 70% of his snaps in line. And then the other times he's like a move tight end, kind of detached from the line of scrimmage. You don't see him flex much. I want to say roughly about 10% of his snaps was him flexed. And a majority of those, when he does get flexed, it's like he's just lined up as a big slot. And he's not really, I wouldn't say he's like a super relied on pass catcher, even though he kind of was CJ Dupree-esque in this sense, where like started last year pretty slow through the first 7 games, 4 catches for 40 yards. Then over the last 5 games, 11 catches for 148 yards and 3 touchdowns. So really saw his volume start to increase. Think he's more of an opportunistic style of tight end where it's like you design some things to get him open, kind of lulls the defense to sleep, kind of like CJ Dupree, kind of like Robbie Utes, but good inline blocker. And I think that when you start talking about this tight end room, if they could land a guy like Brody Dalton, who I do like, and I think from a financial standpoint, NIL standpoint, he fits. He's not going to command like top dollar. They're not looking to spend a ton. He comes in probably being willing to more so be like a depth guy, be maybe that third tight end potentially, whatever it ends up being. It's like if he comes in, then you've got Danny Lewis, you've got Jay Lindsey, and you've got him, or you would have him as your 3 Y options. I've in the past put Caleb Edwards kind of as another option at the Y because he can play the H or the Y. But I think that would allow you, like, the biggest thing that tight ends have to typically deal with when they come in, these young, talented tight ends, is the adjustment as far as the kind of guys they're having to block, because they're still, like, they're not as big as offensive linemen. So that adjustment period is a little bit tougher dealing with SEC defensive ends and stuff. So if maybe you use Caleb Edwards, if he can somehow get on the field, you've got 3 Ys now. You can play him a little bit more at the H, let him be a depth option, whether it be, you could see some Marshall Pritchett.
Right.
Obviously, Josh Cuevas is going to be the main guy there, but Caleb Edwards can kind of be more, spend his freshman year more in a pass-catching role as he continues to adjust to this level, get stronger in the weight room, do all that. I just think that would really fit the tight end room, would make you feel better about the numbers. So if they could get a guy like Brody Dalton, I think that would be huge. Probably won't be the only tight end they go after unless they can secure him or wrap this up pretty quick. But they have been connected, and I do think that is someone that they will pursue.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for hanging out with us on Cover Crimson. You can always catch Clint and the rest of our crew at covercrimson.com. Save up to 25% off the annual subscription right now. So that gets you 25% off. Pretty big. It's only $75 for the year. So you might as well take advantage of that. We appreciate mybookie.ag. Use our promo code Crimson. And what a steal of a deal it is right now. 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip when using the code Crimson at mybookie.ag. And then if you want to go in person, we got you covered there. And if you can't get there in person, MyBookie's got you. If you can get there in person, then go to Pearl River Resort. But Clint, always great to see you. Have a great weekend, my friend. And to you guys, roll Tide.
To Pearl River Resort.